Good morning from beautiful Brisbane, Australia. How are you this morning? It's Friday. Best day of the week sometimes. And welcome to this morning's broadcast where we're trying to get our brain online to actually speak. It's been such a massive week. Have you learnt a lot this week? Have you implemented one step into your day-to-day life in order to help propel your life from recovery into remission? It takes intention. Intention is our key phrase, because without living with intent, we're not going to move from recovery to remission. My name's Linda. I'm your trauma recovery consultant, coach, whatever word fits for you, and I focus on helping you move from recovery to remission through practical steps that we implement in our day-to-day life. And today I want to talk to you about perfectionism, because until I did all the study, I never really understood how much perfectionism, it's Friday, isn't it? How much perfectionism drives us when we've come from adverse childhood experiences. Now, I often look back to an age and stage in my life, especially around the age of 20. So think back to that stage when you've left home, you're out in the world, you generally speaking, we're living with a bunch of other people, and it takes a whole number of things for us to get used to living in this really different environment. You know, it's our first stage of adulting. Well, I look back on that time and I can clearly see how I was so afraid to talk, but pretending that I wasn't afraid to talk. But in being so afraid to talk, and I'm not talking about just day-to-day stuff, I'm talking about when, you sit down and you have discussions and opinions and ideas, but I wouldn't talk unless I knew I was 100% right. And not from the perspective of I'm right, you're wrong, but simply I had to have all my ducks in a row in my mind in order to feel safe to talk. How hard and how energy consuming it is for us to have to live that way. And it's heartbreaking. At the end of the day, it's heartbreaking that we come out of adverse childhood experiences and have to live internally frozen in order to feel that we can be a part of life's community, the community around us, etc., etc. And from there, I'm able to see how much perfectionism has driven a lot of my life. Now, the upside of perfectionism, and there is an upside, is that you find that we're people who are driven to do whatever we do with excellence. So we're not driven to do what we do with excellence in order to be right or in order to be perfect. It's just that we have an inner fire to do things well, okay? That's when we're on the good side of perfectionism, okay? And we understand that it's not about anyone else, it's about how we live our lives, and we don't expect other people to be perfect. Especially with our kids, I didn't raise my kids that way at all. It was like, you've got to discover how you do the dishes. It's not up to me to say, this is how you do the dishes, and it's done this way and this way and this way. It's a process of equipping them that they've got to learn and understand that the process is okay. So how does that apply to us as adults, that we can learn that the process is okay? Well, and first of all, we need to look at some really subtle areas of perfectionism that when we think about it, and I know for me, when I had to start thinking about it, how does the belief from adverse childhood experiences drive me? So for me, there can be beliefs around if I'm good enough, they'll accept me, or I'm trying to think of the other one that comes along too. Maybe as we go through the list, it'll come up. But there's definitely two things that I have to be consciously aware of so that they don't drive me internally. So, okay. Number one, being really hard on yourself. Oh my goodness, I spent my entire life, until I understood all this, my entire life being really, really hard on myself. And it's a defense mechanism. Oh my goodness. If I'm hard on me, then no one else can be hard on me because I'm the hardest on me anyone will ever be. Oh my goodness. And for me, I had to go through a stage of consciously taking a chill pill, metaphorically speaking. Like, take a chill pill, Linda. It's okay. You don't have to give yourself such a hard time. It's okay to make mistakes. And giving ourselves permission to make mistakes is a really big thing, because then when we do that, we work through the emotional side of, I'm okay. It's okay. It's normal. It's human to make mistakes. But when we're going through a childhood that is, with all these adverse experiences, we develop this belief that if I'm hard on myself and I just be perfect, then they'll love and accept me. Okay? And oh my goodness, yeah, I spent years doing that. I promise you, work with somebody who knows what they're doing and give that one up, because you are the most beautiful soul that walks this earth. I will guarantee it. Never feeling good enough. I didn't struggle with this myself. What about you? Have you gone through stages of never feeling good enough? The closest I've come to this one is in marriage, and my rebel with the cause nature wouldn't let me live there, because my thought process was, no, it's not that I'm not good enough, it's that we're not having the conversations that need to happen in marriage. Marriage is hard work, and you need two people who are committed to doing the process. And if either one aren't committed to doing the process, then there is no such thing as marriage. Okay, procrastinating. Now, with complex PTSD, procrastinating comes with a whole range of different elements. And I have done a video, I know it may have been last week or the week before, on procrastinating. And the neurobiology actually comes into play. But procrastinating in perfectionism is that I'm afraid to do something. So we've got to go, it's okay. Again, it comes back to the one before. It's okay. I don't have to procrastinate, because if I make a mistake, I can fix it. I'm an adult, I can fix it. Whereas in childhood, if we made a mistake, it usually had dire consequences, and they will be different for each of us, what those consequences were. One of the consequences in my childhood was you just don't get spoken to at all. It's just, if you didn't behave up to X, Y, and Z standard, then you just don't get spoken to. No correspondence will be entered into, really. So it's the withdrawal of emotional affection when there's no language for a child. Having trouble relaxing. With complex PTSD and this aspect of perfectionism, then our whole muscular system continually on hyper or hypoarousal, we hold our body like this. So the first place we usually notice it is in our jaw. So develop an awareness around whether your jaw is clenched a lot. Then you can begin to, another way I know that I'm starting to get tense is I became really aware of my hands. My hands would clench like this in a fist, so I can be sitting there and my hands will all of a sudden close up. So I've done a lot of work, and now my hands close and they're just relaxed and closed, if that makes sense. But I've developed that awareness that when my hands are closed now, that I need to start breathing, need to start getting air into the heart area and relax. Just keep relaxing and then build that awareness around what were the thoughts that started to make me feel a bit stressed. Okay, what's happening that I'm beginning to have an internal reaction and I need to build that awareness internally. Fear of trying new things and missing opportunities. Can I say that at the level of complex PTSD, that this particular aspect of perfectionism can drive you into ill health, all right? So I remember this clearly as a kid. One of my relatives was having a birthday party, and I didn't know where we were going, what we were doing, etc., etc. And every single part of me wanted to go, but because of how my brain was wired, okay, remember this happens in the early years too, it was like triggering. I got a migraine and I couldn't go. So look at the ill health that develops. And so I missed that opportunity. Now that's in the eyes of a child, but then you work it through. How does that happen for you in adulthood, that when something comes up, all of a sudden your whole body, your whole system from the brain down reacts, and then you miss an opportunity, okay? It can be heartbreaking, but we don't need to. We can work to build strategies individually so that this stops happening for us, all right? Trouble making decisions. I really had to think about how this applies to my life. Like, do you have trouble making decisions? I kind of had to realise that I was the eldest child, and I was just put in a position from a very young age where I had to make decisions. So if you have trouble making decisions, work it back to, it's okay if I make this decision and I'm wrong, that's okay, because I'm going to examine it and I'm going to look at different ways that I can perceive the problem. Now, one of the things that happens neurobiologically is that our perception is offline. So when we're triggered, our perception is offline. So if we're not online, when the brain's not online, the computer's not working internally, then we're not going to be able to perceive all the elements around it. But more than anything, give yourself permission that if I make this decision and it's wrong, I can sit down and work out how I want to make a healthier decision next time. It becomes easier when we can reframe our mind, and then we can get our emotions on track with what we want to do as well. Fear of conflict and fear of people, fear of conflict. We can have a fear of people, and the other side of this too is people pleasing. And I can honestly say that one of the most challenging things as we go from recovery to remission, and I say this with all my heart, is people pleasing is one of the most challenging things to break, because it was literally wired into us in childhood as something that we needed to do. I want to give you encouragement that we can break free. But as we move out into the world, we still have to be aware, if that's driving us, to tell it to take a back seat. Like, seriously, it's not a priority in our adulthood to please other people. It's our priority in adulthood to live a life that is so full and whole internally that it just spills over to help those who need help. We move into areas of life where we can help others because our heart is full and overflowing. And there's always going to be people who don't get on board with where we are at life. And if you follow Brené Brown's teachings, one of her sayings is, if you're not, well, she doesn't phrase it exactly the same that I'm going to. If you're not in the circus, if you're not in the playground playing, if you're not at this level and out there and working your recovery to move with intention to move to remission, then you don't get to have a say in my day-to-day life, okay? You don't get to be critical of who I am. You don't get a say in how I live my life as an adult. And as long as we're not hurting anybody else, with how we're living, then we need to stand up and live our life with intent that we have a reason for being here. And pleasing other people as an adult is not one of them, okay? Anxiety. Oh my goodness, we do whole sessions on anxiety, don't we? But if you take one thing away from today, and anxiety is crippling you at the moment, sit down and go, where am I looking at? What am I looking at in my day-to-day life that I'm feeling is too much for me? Because when we can feel that it's too much for us, we can then take it away and sit down and go, okay, I'm the adult now. I can learn how to manage this situation. I can retrain my brain and my internal system that I can manage this situation. Okay, I hope there's something from today that you can take away and impact your day-to-day life with just one step at a time, and you can begin to implement it into your life. And if you're a parent, use the takeaways to actually implement it into your children's life as you live it and as you do the recovery to remission journey. Teach them too, because they've been watching and they learn from us. And I can absolutely guarantee that your kids will thank you for it. Mine have, and they do, and they thank me, and we continue to learn from each other. Okay, my kids are adults now, but we continue to learn from each other because we know that our relationships are ever evolving and changing as life happens. All right, have the most gorgeous weekend, and I will see you again Monday morning. Unless it's a public holiday that I haven't noted. In Australia, we have lots of them. Okay, have a great one, and thanks for joining in. Bye for now.